During my first interaction with Yen Shen Mu, we talked about our different experiences in education. So the first thing we discussed was what a typical day looked like. So school for him started about 7 in the morning and went till 10:30 at night. For me, school only goes from 7:30 in the morning till about 2:30 at night. Um, he talked about how they have to wear uniforms. I don't have to wear a uniform at my high school. His class periods were 40 minutes, and he had 8 different subjects that he went to each day. I only had 4 subjects that I went to, and they were an hour and a half long, so that's pretty different. He mentioned that his favorite subject was chemistry, so that was pretty interesting. I also asked him if he had more male or female teachers, and he said that he had more female teachers. That's actually different from my high school. We had a pretty even amount of male and female teachers, so that was a difference. He also talked about how you could leave campus to go to lunch and get something to eat and then come back for the rest of their classes. And at my high school, you actually can't leave campus. We have a closed campus, so you could either eat in the lunchroom or you could pack a lunch. So either way. He also talked about how they ride a bus to school, so that's a similarity, is that kids at my high school also rode the bus to school. You could either drive, your parents could drive you, or you could ride the bus. I thought that a big difference was that they stay in dorms where he went to school, and at my school you just go home at the end of the day, but at their end of the school day they go back to their dorms and they share that with about 8 different kids, and that's when they finish studying for the night and wrap up. So that's pretty crazy that he only got to go home to see his family on weekends. It's really uncommon here, I guess. And then he said that typically his clubs and sports would occur during lunchtime, so he would eat for about an hour and then he would have like practice. And for us, that's also very different because our sports would occur after school hours. So after 2:30, you might have practice at 3 or 4, maybe even 5, but we would never have school or have our sports practices during school. Talking with Yen Shen Mu, there is a ton of differences between our high schools. It's actually pretty shocking, but I found it really interesting as well. Alrighty, so next we discussed the top 3 things that we worried about in high school and the top 3 things that made us really happy in high school. So when discussing this with Yen Shen Mu, he made it clear that his top worry in high school was the JAKO, which is the Chinese college entrance exam. You have to get a really good score on that in order to get into college, so he said that that was one of his biggest worries. He also worried about homework. He had a lot of that and a lot of studying to do, so he really stressed about that. And he also stressed about his grades. Obviously, if you're going to get into a good college, you have to have good grades as well. So he said that that was a big worry. But on the other hand, he said that something that made him happy in high school was the teachers. The teachers were absolutely excellent there, and he said more specifically that they were super patient when it came to learning a foreign language. So when he was learning English, they were very helpful and patient with him. He also likes the clubs that he could be involved in at his high school, like basketball and soccer. And then lastly, he loved the group of friends that he hung out with in high school. So he had a good group of buddies that he could eat lunch with and be in sports with. So that also was something that made him happy. Okay, so I kind of already touched on this, but the next bullet point is to talk about the big tests that we each had during high school. So I already mentioned the JAKO, college entrance exam, and that was his one major test in high school. Ours would be the SAT or ACT, but he also mentioned that he had 3 tests a week for each of his 8 courses. So that is actually a ton of tests, if you ask me. I would never have that many tests a week, but he said that he studied frequently and that just about every day he would have 1 to 2 tests. Alrighty. Uh, the last bullet point we discussed were how we prepared for these different tests. For me, I would just study. I would usually either study with a group of friends or I would study during school or seminar. For him, he studied during the 3 hour self study that they had each day at school. He also said that they would have study groups during their lunch hour. And lastly, he said that they would stay up all night actually and study for tests, and they would not sleep. So that's pretty. Okay, so my initial reaction was shock. I could not believe how many differences there are between the two educations, both Chinese and American. Talking about the similarities and differences throughout our days was so interesting. I would have never guessed that there were so many differences, and I learned so much from talking to Yan Shen Mu. I guess I just didn't realize how much of a difference there is between the two cultures, but now that I have talked with my new international friend, I've really learned a lot about how different each culture can be.